Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Technology, a podcast exploring the latest in computers, networking, home automation, mobile computing, and all things technology related. Our hosts will take a deeper dive into the latest and greatest in tech trends and give you the information you need to enable your tech-centric world.
This is Insights into Technology, Episode 3. It's all about the services. I'm your host, Joseph Whelan, and this is this week's tech news. This first article comes to us from TechCrunch, Salt Typhoon and the Dangers of Backdoors. Recent reports reveal that China-backed hackers, identified as Salt Typhoon Group, have compromised wiretap systems of major U.S. telecom and internet service providers, including AT&T, Lumen, and Verizon. These wiretap systems, mandated by the 1994 Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act, ALEA, grant access to sensitive customer data, including internet traffic and browsing histories. The breach is believed to enable large-scale data collection with potential national security implications. Though the full extent of the hackers' goals remains unclear, experts have long warned that backdoors meant for law enforcement access by governments could be exploited by malicious actors. This event underscores the inherent risks in such systems, emphasizing the difficulty of securing backdoors that cannot be abused. Encryption advocates warn that these breaches expose the vulnerabilities in current surveillance laws, advocating for stronger encryption to protect data from both malicious hackers and government overreach. So this incident itself actually highlights the significant concerns for a number of commercial and enterprise security groups, particularly in sectors that handle sensitive data, such as telecoms, internet providers, and other industries subject to regulatory compliance. The government has long been advocating having backdoors, and most of these pushes for backdoors through encryption, because we've reached a point now where encryption standards are so high, it's almost impossible to break current encryption standards. And politicians have been trying to enable law enforcement by advocating for these backdoors to be put in place. And most security experts have universally agreed that by inherently breaking encryption, by putting in these backdoors, you're simply inviting malicious actors to come in and exploit these backdoors for their own nefarious intent. Such backdoors are susceptible to exploitation, and enterprises. The event underscores the critical need to reevaluate security frameworks that rely on government-mandated backdoors or similar access points. The breach points to broader challenges of balancing legal compliance with the need for robust security measures that prevent unauthorized access. And this is the old adage of, do you want to protect the bad guys at the same time you're protecting your average citizens? And there comes a point where there has to be some level of compromise with your security in order to allow law enforcement to do their job. Conversely, your cybersecurity experts tell you that you can still do your police work without having access to encryption. And we've seen this come up numerous times, most recently with Mayor Adams of New York, where FBI is trying to get access to his phone, his iPhone. And Apple has long said they don't hold the key, so they can't get you access. But there are well-known third parties. There's an Israeli company that has worked with the federal government on numerous occasions to provide basically backdoors and exploits, chain exploits that allow you to get past these, which by their very definition are questionable from a legal standpoint. But this is a classic example of these backdoors were put in place. They haven't been exploited in decades, and now they're being exploited, and they're a major security risk. And I think you're going to see this type of thing happen more frequently than we've seen it in the past, certainly because your threat vectors have increased significantly. Our next story comes to us from Bleeping Computer. They tell us cyber attacks hit major U.S. water utility. American Water in my backyard here, based in Camden, New Jersey, the largest U.S. water and wastewater utility experienced a cyber attack that forced the company to shut down some of its systems, including its customer portal and billing services. In response, the company has engaged third-party cybersecurity experts and reported the breach to law enforcement, with whom they're conducting a joint investigation. Despite the attack, American Water has assured customers that there will be no late charges during the service outage and that its water and wastewater facilities remain unaffected. This incident is part of a broader trend of cyber attacks targeting the water sector, following similar incidents at water facilities in Arkansas and Pennsylvania. It also coincides with warnings from the Water Information Sharing and Analysis Center regarding Russian-linked cyber attacks on the water sector. Additionally, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has recently issued guidance to help water utilities strengthen their cybersecurity measures. Now, this incident demonstrates the vulnerability of key business systems such as customer portals and billing services to cyber threats, underscoring the importance of having robust incident response plans, including engaging external cybersecurity experts and law enforcement. For enterprises, the attack serves as a reminder of the rising threats posed by nation-state actors targeting critical infrastructure, as indicated by similar attacks in the water sector. It also reinforces the need for proactive cybersecurity measures, as recommended by the U.S. Environmental Protection and industry bodies, to mitigate risks and reduce exposure to future threats. Enterprises must prioritize securing both operational and customer-facing systems to maintain service continuity and safeguard sensitive data. Now, the interesting thing here is in the military side of things, or in the procurement side of things, the federal government has been very diligent in imposing cybersecurity standards on prime contractors and subcontractors. But for some reason, they don't seem to put the same emphasis on infrastructure systems like water and sewage and power and so forth. This is a disturbing trend that, again, we spoke of this in our last episode, where the federal government has a rather scattershot approach to cybersecurity. And in order for cybersecurity to be effective, it has to be applied consistently across the board with rigid standards. And if the federal government is not going to impose that on infrastructure as it is in other areas, then you're always going to have some vulnerability, some vector, some way for the bad guys to get in and do the damage that they need to do. Now, in the grand scheme or the broader scheme of things here, when you look at these and you look at this compared to other incidents that we're seeing, there really is this feeling of there being a major operation or a trend towards some kind of significant operation, if nothing else, to test an infrastructure of exploits that are in place that could be used to cripple the country in a surprise attack or a time of war. I mean, many people are talking about being on the lookout for a digital Pearl Harbor, if you will. So we need to really be much more diligent when it comes to this stuff. Cybersecurity isn't difficult. It doesn't need to be invented. There are cybersecurity standards that are out there. There's an investment that's involved, and the federal government doesn't seem to have a problem imposing these unfunded mandates on vendors that do business with them. I don't know why they would be hesitant to do it with infrastructure as well. But until we get on the same page, this is going to be a very recurring, dangerous thing that we're going to see. This next issue, or next article rather, comes to us from CNBC, and they tell us that DOJ is considering a Google breakup, which, given our last article here, kind of tells me that they're barking up the wrong tree here with their priorities. But anyway, the Department of Justice has proposed potential remedies for Google's search engine business as part of an ongoing antitrust case, which may include structural changes, such as a possible breakup of the company, or behavioral measures to limit its market dominance. The DOJ's recommendations aim to prevent Google from leveraging its products like Chrome, Play, and Android to give undue advantage to its search engine and related services. It also suggests prohibiting Google from engaging in exclusive agreements, such as those with Apple and Samsung, and advocates by offering users a choice of search engines through a, quote, choice screen. Additionally, the DOJ recommends that Google share its search data and models, including AI features, with competitors. The case follows a 2020 lawsuit that found Google violated antitrust laws by maintaining a monopoly in the search market. While the DOJ's recommendations are still under consideration, with a final ruling expected by 2025, legal experts believe the court may focus on ending Google's exclusive agreements rather than pursuing a company breakup. Google, which holds 90% of the search market, has expressed strong opposition, arguing that such remedies would harm consumers and stifle innovation. And in the grand scheme of things, I would tend to agree with this. Google became the top search engine not through some nefarious act or underhanded dealings. They were the best product on the market, and the market demands high quality at low prices. And the market has chosen to accept the privacy implications and the exclusivity implications of Google. I don't think there's anybody that is being harmed that has gone to the federal government at this point in time, other than other companies who feel like they're being left out. My take on that is, if you don't want to be left out of the search market, build a better search engine. And given the advent of AI now, that's not that difficult to do. We've gone through numerous search engines. And, I started working in the internet back in the 90s, and Yahoo was big, and we had Hotbot back then, and numerous other search engines that all fell by the wayside as innovations continued to occur. When Google came in, they had the best product on the market, and they've stayed at the top of the market with their algorithms and the attention that they give and the free services that they give. It's hard to argue with free, especially when you're getting top-level results. So the DOJ is going after probably a non-issue here, and anything the DOJ does to stifle Google, and I'm not a Google fan, believe me. I think Google is probably, fallen well far of their original mandate of do no harm at this point in time. But there isn't a better product on the market. And if the Department of Justice comes in and breaks them up, they're only going to harm consumers at that point in time. They're not going to benefit consumers by breaking up Google and making Google go away. This isn't like an AT&T scenario here where you literally had one choice in regions. This isn't a Microsoft thing where they're forcing a browser down your throat. And even You go back and look at the antitrust case that Microsoft had with the government. Had that case never come to fruition, Microsoft would have lost its dominance. It was already losing its dominance by the time that case was resolved. And it was because their product was being replaced by other products that were better. So this is one of those things where I think the industry can self-regulate itself here, and we don't need government interference. I think the less government interference we have in this stuff, especially when it comes to technology, because government is so slow to react, the better off we are. Before we continue on, I did want to take a moment to invite you to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio and video versions of our podcast listed as Insights into Things. I would invite you to, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio. I would also invite you to contact us. You can call in and leave a voicemail for us. Our voicemail number is 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. If you want to leave a voicemail for us, let us know your thoughts, your comments. If you'd like to get on one of our shows, just mention which show you'd like to get on. My apologies. I'm recovering from a bit of a cold here, so got a bit of a itch in the throat. You can find us on Twitter or X at insights_things, though I suspect we're not going to be on there much longer at this point. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com, or you can find links to all of that and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. And we'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology, and this is your tech news for the week. This next article comes to us from Emerge. A new technique slashes AI energy usage by 95%. Researchers at Bit Energy AI Inc. have developed a new technique called linear complexity multiplication, or ELMO, that could significantly reduce the energy consumption of AI models by up to 95% without sacrificing performance. ELMO replaces energy-intensive floating point multiplications with simpler, more efficient integer additions, drastically cutting the power needed for AI computations. This approach offers a potential solution to the growing concern over AI's high energy usage, which is expected to reach levels comparable to Bitcoin mining by 2027. Tests have shown that ELMO can maintain accuracy with only a minimal performance drop of 0.07%, making it a promising innovation for energy-hungry AI models. ELMO could be particularly beneficial for transformer-based models like GPT, which are known for their heavy computational demands. By integrating ELMO into these models, The energy required for tasks like natural language processing, vision, and symbolic reasoning could be greatly reduced. However, the method requires specialized hardware for full optimization, which means current systems can't yet fully exploit its potential. The researchers are working on developing the necessary hardware and programming APIs to unlock Elmo's full capabilities, potentially ushering in a new era of energy-efficient AI. The development of LMUL, or linear complexity multiplication, presents significant implications for enterprise computing, particularly in the realm of AI. By reducing AI energy consumption by up to 95% without sacrificing performance, it offers a breakthrough for enterprises. Right now, we're working, at my company, we're working on prototyping some AI pilot projects that we're running into. And it's already well known that Intel-based processors don't really handle GPT-style models very well. So what we're finding is we're having to move over to ARM-based processors, Snapdragon, Apple M1s. In fact, what we're prototyping it on is a Mac Studio, similar to one of the ones behind me here, and we find computational power there to be significantly, computational effectiveness to be significantly better. But a lot of the AI cloud-based farms that are out there are literally taking up shop next to power plants and hydroelectric dams and stuff like that because of the demand and power. You've got power, you've got cooling requirements that are involved. So something like this that can come along, and we're probably, given the technology where it's at right now, you're probably 10 to 15 years down the line before this is really fully implemented widespread. And it may never be fully implemented in the condition that it's in right now, the state that it's in right now. I expect to see significant changes in technology over the next 4 or 5 years, where what we're seeing as Elmo now will be something based on it, but very different within 5 years. But you may see something come to market in 5 years, 10 years that's significantly different than what we have. And once we get over that power consumption and cooling hump, you're really going to see AI take off even more than it's already skyrocketed. So it's a very promising technology, and it shows a lot of potential for AI and other applications, other human similar reasoning applications, I should say. Our next article comes to us from Reuters. They tell us that, it is political season, it's election season here, so it's hard not to get at least one political article going here. Virginia congressional candidate creates AI chatbot as debate stand-in for incumbent. And as much as this is a political stunt, it's actually an interesting use of technology. Bentley Hansel, an independent candidate for Virginia's 8th congressional district, created an AI chatbot named DonBot to stand in for incumbent Democrat Mayor Don Bayer, who has not participated in additional debates since September. Hansel, frustrated by Bayer's absence, trained the bot on Bayer's official website and statements, ensuring it reflects the candidate's positions accurately. And, I mean, he's a politician. I don't know how accurate they really are, so. The debate, set for October 17th, will feature Hansel, another independent candidate, David Kennedy, and DonBot, in a unique showcase of AI in politics. The initiative highlights broader concerns about the use of AI in elections. While DonBot has demonstrated accuracy in policy responses, the growing potential for AI-generated deepfakes raises ethical and legal questions. At least 26 states are already considering regulations on generative AI in elections, but federal regulations are lagging, as with anything technology-wise in the federal government. While Hansel's use of AI aims to increase transparency, experts stress the importance of clear communication that the bot is not the actual candidate. Now, this is an interesting political stunt here, and that's really what I'm chalking this up to. It's a text-based bot. It's not voice chat or anything like that, so it's not going to be interactive the way that somebody on stage would be, which is kind of be a mood killer for what he's hyping this up to be. And frankly, it doesn't need to be text-based. There have been numerous instances in which we've seen live deep fakes happen. One happened to be, I want to say it was an Australian company. I forget what it was, but it was a financial company, and the employee that worked in the finance department was asked to transfer something along the lines of $2 million into a bank account he wasn't familiar with. And doing his due diligence and being overly cautious, he set up a video call with the CEO and the executives of the company. And they all got on a video call and legitimized everything and told him everything was on the up and up. He makes the transfer. And it turns out that it was a malicious transfer. And the conference call that he thought he was on was completely deep-faked. The fact that you can do that live and the computational power and technology needed for that being available now is terrifying. But I could totally see something like that happening here, where you're trying to get a candidate to talk to you and the candidate doesn't want to engage, which, we saw with the presidential debates where someone wants to debate, the other one doesn't because they didn't do well in the last one and they're trying to duck out and so forth. Former President Trump actually, famously put an empty podium up on stage at one of his rallies as a political stunt to try to, kind of call out his opponent when he was running against Biden. So this type of thing is not unusual. I don't know if it's impressive as much as it's scary, is that the technology exists right now to do this. And on numerous levels, we're seeing James Earl Jones just recently passed away. And prior to doing that, he had sold his voice rights to Disney, basically, so they could continue going on making Star Wars movies with him as Darth Vader and whatever other, as Mufasa and whatever role that they want to employ his voice in. And it's basically just sampling his voice using those voice recordings to create new vocals for him. The technology is there that we can be digitally replaced like that. And there's a part of that that's sobering in that it makes you question how significant we are in the grand scheme of things if we can be easily replaced like that. But this isn't just a voice. This is literally taking and training a model based on your policy statements, your correspondence, your interviews that you've done already, and compiling all of that information and basically turning it into a simulated version of you. And if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, if we can do that, do we really need politicians at that point in time? That's a sobering thought in and of itself. This next article comes to us from CNN. TikTok is sued by 14 attorneys generals over alleged harm to children's mental health. Boy, everybody's piling on TikTok these days, aren't they? A bipartisan group, and that right there is a statement in today's political climate that we have a bipartisan group, but a bipartisan group of 14 state attorneys general has filed lawsuits against TikTok, alleging the platform's design and features have harmed young users' mental health by fostering addictive behavior. Now, just as a side here, They're going to sue TikTok for fostering addictive behavior, but the federal government still subsidizes the tobacco industry. Just worth mentioning there. Pot, kettle. The lawsuit claims TikTok's algorithms, viral challenges, and push notifications are designed to keep minors on the app for extended periods of time, encouraging compulsive use. Yes, of course. They're going to try to keep you in the app so they can get advertising revenue and other information from you. Why the Department of Justice seems shocked by that, I don't know. Every other social media outlet does it too. Google does it in their search engines. Facebook does it. Twitter does it. Why they're singling out TikTok because they're a Chinese company, kind of hypocritical, really, in my opinion. The complaints also highlight concerns over risky behavior promoted by TikTok challenges and the platform's beauty filters, which are said to contribute to negative body image and mental health issues. If you're going to pick on that, you have to go after Snapchat too for their filters. And you have to go after Zoom for their complexion altering technology that they use for their voice calls. So they had the same complaints. They have these complaints, but these same complaints can be lodged against dozens of other companies that aren't being picked on too. I'm not a TikTok fan either. I hardly ever use it, but just trying to make sure that we treat everybody equally here. The lawsuit's financial penalties. The lawsuit seeks financial penalties and call for changes to TikTok's operations. The lawsuits are part of broader scrutiny of TikTok, which is also facing potential legal actions related to data privacy violations and increasing regulatory pressure to address the impact of social media on youth. If anyone has ever heard of Cambridge Analytica, you'll realize that what TikTok is doing is insignificant next to what Facebook and Cambridge Analytica did. The lawsuits coincide with a CDC report showing that frequent social media use is associated with higher rates of sadness, hopelessness, and bullying among teens, particularly teen girls. Yet they are not going after any other social media platforms, and it's prevalent on all of them. This growing attention on the negative effects of social media highlights a need for greater regulation and transparency on how platforms engage with younger audiences. And I couldn't disagree with that stance more vehemently than I do right now. The government does not need more nanny. We don't need more nanny laws from the government. The government doesn't need to be involved in raising our children, certainly not my children. That's my job. The government can't even run itself. The last thing I want is corrupt politicians who have no morals and no ethics trying to dictate how my kids should be raised. They are the absolute last people on the face of the earth who should have any influence on how our kids are brought up. The fact that they keep trying to pass these nanny laws that take away a parent's right to regulate what their child is doing is atrocious. I'm totally against this type of stuff. I'm even more against it when you're targeting a single company in the form of TikTok because they're a Chinese-based company. If you want to ban Chinese companies, then ban Chinese companies. Don't pick on one because you have a couple of politicians who didn't like how their users responded to it, or because there were attacks against certain politicians, and now you're going to go after TikTok for that. That's exactly what this is. So stay out of my parenting rights here, first of all. And second of all, apply the standards across the board. Facebook has been around and been doing all these dangerous things far longer than TikTok has. Twitter has become a complete cesspool. X, whatever Elon wants to call it now. It's an absolute cesspool that brings out the worst in human beings. Yet for some reason, those are protected because they're US-based companies. If anything else, given the level of influence and distortion and intimidation that they're involved with, and their attempts to interfere with U.S. elections, they should be the first ones that you target, not a platform that does stupid dances. So the federal government really needs to get its act together and get its priorities straight here, because it's a disaster. It really is. We're going to take our second break here. And when we come back, we're going to finish our part 3 of what was supposed to be a 1-part deep dive into the anatomy of a podcast. And we're going to talk about services. And we're going to finish that deep dive up today. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of your favorite gaming podcast finishing with a play?
Oh, no!
Well, check out No Credits Rolled, where we play the games but rarely finish them. How's it going, folks? I'm Sam Whelan, your friendly host at No Credits Rolled, the ultimate gaming podcast, where we dish out the latest scoops and reviews on all your beloved video games.
Hey, listen!
Not only that, but we spice things up with some guest interviews and even give you, yes, you, a chance to have your say. Tune in every other week for a fresh dose of No Credits Rolled, available on all major podcast platforms, and hit us up on social media at No Credits Rolled. So why wait? Let's dive into the gaming world together, where finishing games is optional, but the fun is guaranteed.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. And this is part 3 of our anatomy of a podcast. So we talked about the hardware in our first segment, in our first session. We talked about the software in our last episode. And today we're going to talk about services. So once you've gone through, produced the content, done all the recordings, edited it all up, and got everything hunky-dory and ready to go, what do you do with it? Now, there's a number of services that we depend on to make the podcast work. The first of those is, and probably most important, obviously, is podcast hosting. So one thing everyone needs when running a podcast is a host. This is an online service that you can publish your material to, or publish it somewhere else and point to it, depending on what route you go. But the podcast hosting service itself generates what's called an RSS feed. RSS just stands for really simple syndication. And it's a web feed that allows users and applications to automatically receive updates from websites. Your podcast indexers like Apple and Spotify, this is what they use to get updates of your podcast. They don't actually house the podcast themselves. That's a popular misconception. So what you do is you produce your files, whether they're audio or video or what have you, you put them on a publicly available hosting service somewhere. You could do this. You could do it before with YouTube, and I think they've reinstated that as well. There's a third-party service you can use to actually generate an RSS feed from your YouTube. So in the podcasting client, when we publish our sites, we host the RSS feed that transmits that RSS feed to the rest of the world. And then your podcasting clients come along, they get that updated feed of the client, they're notified when there's a new episode, and they can either proactively reach out and grab it, or they can manually go out and download it themselves. We've traditionally used, since we started doing video, we've traditionally used 2 different hosts. We would use one for an audio feed. We would use a different one for a video feed. And the reason for this is not a lot of podcast indexers will support video. Certainly not that many supported video when I started out about 6 years ago. That's changed a lot. Even Spotify is now allowing for video as well. We're actually in the process of consolidating our feeds down. So each of our podcasts, this is our 4th podcast now. We've had Insights into Teens, Insights into Technology, Insights into Tomorrow, and now Insights into Technology. The first three, with the exception of Technology, have all had a dedicated audio feed and a shared video feed. So what it allows us to do in consolidating is we're going to simplify our footprint on the web to make it easier. We're going to provide a single point of contact for downloading all of our material. It's going to reduce the complexities of publishing. It'll also reduce overall costs associated with running the podcast. And right now, we've settled on Podbean for both audio and video. There's a number of sites out there. Very early on, we were using Castro, or Castro, however you pronounce that. Not Fidel, not the guy from Cuba. And what would happen, and I liked Castro. Castro came very highly rated at the time that we started with them a few years ago. They had a great, our main website's hosted on WordPress, and they had a fantastic WordPress plugin that would auto publish the podcasts on the website once they go live on the host. And it was very convenient. Unfortunately, about 2 years ago, I guess now, they decided that they were going to dramatically increase their prices without any real justification for it. And this is we don't make money off of this podcast, so everything's an expense, and keeping expenses down keeps the lights on. And when you're going to double my monthly podcast hosting fee, I have to, as much as I love their service, I had to find something else that was more affordable. So at that time, we moved over to Podbean, and Podbean's fantastic. They allow FTP upload of the software. They now have AI generation of comments and so forth. So I'm very happy with what Podbean offers and the additional services that they offer. So that's hosting the podcast. So when we publish, what we'll do is we'll cut a video file. We'll cut an audio file. Audio files are almost always MP3. Video files are MP4s. And usually what I have to do, we'll shoot in 1080p HD at 30 frames a second. And that generates a very large file, especially when you're talking about a 45-minute to an hour podcast. And unfortunately, Podbean won't handle them that large. So what I have to do is take them and run them through a piece of software that I didn't talk about last week called Handbrake. And Handbrake allows me to scale the compression up, cut the frame rate down. I mean, it's a podcast. We're not doing action movies or anything. So I'll cut the frame rate down from 30 to 24 frames, which is typical movie frame rates, or 23.98 or whatever it is. And I'll make a much smaller file out of it. And at that resolution and that frame rate, it gives me a small enough file. I'll upload the video file as an MP4. I'll upload the MP3 file. Then we'll go in and create the entries on Podbean. And Podbean will update the RSS feeds. And you can schedule these for releases and whatnot. And that's usually what happens with our host. Now, one of the things Podbean does do, which is very convenient, is they will kick over a post to my WordPress site. And that starts the process, but it's not entirely in a finished process. I have to go through and polish that off, but that level of integration is very convenient for me. We'll also post to YouTube. We'll post full-scale videos to YouTube. YouTube then scales them as needed on their end. So once all the files are up there, the next thing that we do is we stream. So we stream 5 days a week. And our streams, while they are monitored live, they are not broadcast live, not anymore at least. I found significant technical issues trying to broadcast and record at the same time. And I just assume avoid all of that and record and publish on schedule now. However, when we do stream live, we use they're not called, I call them reflectors. Back in the shock, Winamp days, you used to have reflectors that you would broadcast to, and everyone would download from your reflector. So I'm kind of old school. I still refer to it as reflector services. We use Restream.io, and what that allows us to do, and the free version, again, we're not a profit business here. It's all expense. So try to avoid the excessive cost of a subscription to Restream. We use the free version that allows you to stream to 2 sites simultaneously. Now, they do have subscription plans, and those subscription plans allow you to add numerous other platforms as well. When we started out with them, we were allowed to have, I think, 4. They've since cut it down to 2, which is unfortunate. But right now we stream to Twitch and we stream to YouTube live. So we do that 5 days a week on a schedule. We broadcast different shows each day. And it basically it gives us our own channel. So that's posting it, that's streaming it. If we do live streams, and we'll get back to it eventually, I'm sure, once I have a tolerance for the technical difficulties of the limitations I've run into. It seems the more sophisticated my equipment gets, the less capabilities I seem to have, which I think is hilarious. So there's a number of media services that we use to help produce content for it. So unless you're generating all the media and content yourself as original work, chances are you're going to lean on some of these online services for graphics, animations, music, sound effects, and so forth. There's a number of reputable places that are reasonably priced to serve this segment of the market. Early on, I settled on a few services, and I was fortunate. I haven't had a reason to look elsewhere. So when it comes to audio, music, effects, and transitions, I'm a big fan of a service called Storyblocks. They have a reasonably large library of stock media, from 4K to HD, video, music, images, and more. They use easy-to-use workflow tools using plugins that integrate into their library to Adobe's video editing tools, which is really nice because we're an Adobe shop. Their licensing is fairly straightforward. One of the things you do have to be careful about when it comes to digital content on your website or on your podcast is whether or not you're in copyright violations. And I'll be honest, I've done bad things in the past and used people's stuff, usually in movie trailers. And I've gotten copyright hits on that. Nothing serious. I've not had any lawsuits. Just had to take the content down. I actually did have one instance where I had gone out and recorded a guest who was on the podcast. He was a music performer, and he was performing live, and I happened to record a part of one of his sets, and he was doing some Eagles music, and it wasn't even, it was a very modified version, I think, of Hotel California. And just saying that, I'll probably get a takedown notice now. But he recorded. He wasn't recording. He was performing it live, and he was playing it. And I recorded it, and I had played it back on one of our segments of Insights into Entertainment. And I got a cease and desist order on that, which I thought was kind of interesting because it wasn't technically copyrighted material. It was his own material. But anyway, whatever you use for your media and content, make sure that you are protected in perpetuity. Some of the services that are out there will only protect you while you have a subscription to them. And those are the ones that you want to try to avoid. Depending on the plan that you get unlimited access to all Storyblocks material. Right now, we're using them exclusively for our music and sound effects at the moment. The next thing that we do is we do images and video, logos, lower thirds. You see my lower thirds here. I use a couple sources for this. Pixabay is a great one. They're a free stock photography and royalty-free website. Artists share their photos and illustrations or vector graphics. They'll do film footage, stock music, and sound effects. All that material is shared under a custom Pixabay content license, allowing free use of materials with minimal restrictions. But again, licensing is important. Make sure that anything you're using, you either create it yourself or you have a license to use it. From time to time, we do pull in images from Pixabay for cover art and so forth. And the last one that I wanted to talk about here was Render Forest. Render Forest is interesting. It's an all-in-one video maker. You can edit and do intros. All of our intros for the show, our transitions for the show are all done using Render Forest. I probably should go back and redo these because they're getting kind of long in the tooth now. But their website has an interesting kind of drag and drop interface with stock material that they have. You line stuff up on a timeline. It's easy to edit, trim, and add effects. You can drop your own custom logos in. You can brand your own stuff. They do stunning intros. They do outros. They do visualizations. They do music. Some of the transitions and material that they have, they've got music built into it. You don't need to be a video editor, a professional video editor to use the service. It's very intuitive. It's limited. It's, you're not going in there making a major motion picture with it. But if you want to put a 30-second intro video together to some music and throw your logo in there, it's great for that. So that's who we've used in the past. And that's pretty much all the services that we use. We don't really go too crazy with this stuff, but you take all these things together and you put the hardware together, you put the software together, I've learned a tremendous amount about audio processing and audio engineering. I've learned a lot about video editing. It's been a very educational experience, and I would recommend it for people, even if it's just a hobby to play around with. It's a great experience to have. So that wraps up our deep dive into the anatomy of a podcast. Before we go, that is the last of what we had today. But before we go, I would want to once again invite you to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio and video versions of this podcast listed under Insights into Things. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. You can call us, give us your feedback, tell us how we're doing. If you want to give us a comment on the show, just mention that on the call and which show you'd like to be on. You can call us at 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. Obviously, these are all family-friendly shows, so keep it clean, obviously. Keep it relevant to the show if you don't mind. Once again, that's 856-403-8788. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can find high-res videos of all of our shows on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. Just a side note, if you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, you do get a free monthly Twitch subscription. If you threw that our way, that would be much appreciated. That helps us to keep the lights on here when that happens. You can find us on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Or you can find us on the web at our main website at www www.insightsintothings.com. That's it. Another one in the books.